Coming up on this week's edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Can you imagine what it's like to raise cattle in our 50th state, Hawaii? It's been done for more than 200 years. And today we'll visit with a group of Hawaii cattle producers to learn about the challenges and opportunities they face on their operations.
And now, a special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kevin Auctioner. Thanks for joining us. Now, if you're a regular viewer of Cattlemen to Cattlemen, you know we take you around the country to see the wide variety of cattle production in the United States. From the mountains to the plains, every farm and ranch is different and faces its own set of challenges, from weather to geography to regulatory and urban encroachment pressures. But today, we're going to give you an insight into what it's like to be a cattle producer in the great state of Hawaii, a place that many think of only as a vacation destination. But in fact, Hawaii cattle ranches account for more than 1 million acres in the state, and the history of the industry goes back more than 200 years. So to help us get the real story, we're joined today by 4 cattlemen who are ready to share their firsthand and, in most cases, lifelong experiences in the Hawaii cattle industry. Let's meet them now. Keoki Wood is from the Parker Ranch on the Big Island of Hawaii. Keoki, tell us a little bit about yourself and the Parker Ranch.
Well, I've born and raised in Hawaii and been at Parker Ranch now for 16 years. The Parker Ranch is over 170 years old, though, so we've been at it for quite some time. Most people don't realize, though, that the ranch, although it was initially founded by John Palmer Parker, it's now in a foundation trust, and so the beneficiaries of that trust are the community of Waimea, a community hospital, 2 private schools, and a community foundation are all basically on the paycheck for Parker Ranch.
That's amazing. And Ken Miranda comes with us from Maui. I don't think of Maui being cattle ranching country, but tell us a little bit about your ranch.
Yeah, I run our family ranch on Maui. It's called Onoulu Ranch up on the slope of Haleakala. And we are about 102 years old now. And we, just like Parker Ranch, have diversified into a few things outside of the cattle. But life there on Maui has its challenges in that it is a very sought-after tourist destination, and also a place for people to migrate to retire and live. So there are different situations and challenges that we have to deal with that other places of the country might not have to.
And Pana Van Holt comes to us from the Big Island of Hawaii, the Punaholo Ranch. Is that correct? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Our ranch is going to be 90 years old in the family this year. It started in 1928 by my father and a partner of his, Atherton Richards. And I was fortunate enough to be hired back and work with Monty Richards, who was the nephew of Atherton, and on a ranch called Kahua Ranch, and then we ended up splitting off and becoming a Punaholo Ranch. And so we've been there ever since, and 5 generations in Hawaii. Our ranching traditions go back to Kauai and Oahu, and now on the Big Island.
Incredible. And Jason Van Tassel is our final guest. You're also with the Parker Ranch, is that right?
Correct, Kevin. I moved over to Hawaii in about 4 years ago with my family, and I actually work with Keoki. He and I share our livestock responsibilities on the ranch. I'm the newcomer out of the 4 of us, but it's been a great experience for us, being able to be kind of adopted in by these other ranches and made to feel part of the family, just as we have in other areas of the country where we've been.
That's fantastic. You know, most people, when they think of Hawaii, they think of beaches and vacation destination. Tell us a little bit about just the size and scope of the beef industry in Hawaii.
Sure, you know, the entire state, we only run about 80,000 mother cows, but it's certainly a lot more than most people would think. They're on 5 major islands. And ranching consists of about 25% of the total acreage in the state of Hawaii. So you know, we play a pretty significant role in our agricultural economy.
You know, I remember being on the main island of Hawaii and just having an appreciation for the vast difference in weather just on that one island. Tell us about some of the challenges you all face from a weather standpoint when you're ranching in Hawaii.
Yeah, you know, weather in Hawaii, it's kind of one of those deals where if you don't like the weather here, you can drive 5 minutes and find something a little different, because we're influenced primarily by trade winds coming off of the ocean, and on the windward side of each island, rainfall levels can get very high. Probably two of the wettest spots in the world are in Hawaii, one on Kauai, Mount Waialeale of 460 inches a year, and the West Maui Mountains at I believe that's 402 inches. But you only have to go 25 miles and you can get to an area that's, you know, annual rainfall of 12 to 15 inches a year on the leeward side. So there's a big variation in rainfall, and elevation is another one that causes a lot of change, because you know, you can go from sea level to top of Mauna Kea, where Parker Ranch is 15,000 plus. So I think you can find almost every ecosystem in the world. Not quite, but we have a lot of different climates and temperatures and elevations to deal with, which gives a lot of challenge to how you manage your cattle.
And I do want to visit about that a little bit later. I guess first, what would you say are some of the key myths or maybe misunderstandings people have about raising cattle in Hawaii?
Palm trees and beach. That's the big one.
That's a big one, yeah.
As Ken was mentioning, the big island of Hawaii is about the size of the state of Connecticut. It's got 11 of the ecosystems in the world. There are 13 total. We don't have Sahara desert conditions. We don't have Antarctica, but we have everything from alpine.
That's phenomenal. And what are some of the biggest changes that you all have seen just even in the last 10 or so years in terms of how the cattle industry has changed in Hawaii?
You know, I think one of the things we've seen the biggest change in is the onset of more finished animals being produced and raised locally than we have in the last 20 or 30 years. We've seen the cattle industry go from more of a cull cow or a cow market to more finished animals. And there's definitely been a change in marketing these cattle, getting them from Hawaii to the mainland. We are really good at adapting and adjusting to the things that we need to make that happen.
But that's right. Well, we've got a lot more ground to cover before we're through. Coming up, our panel will discuss the challenges of marketing the cattle and the beef produced in Hawaii. And next, we'll dig deeper into the environmental challenges cattle producers in Hawaii face every day. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Don't miss the 2018 NCBA Legislative Conference in Washington, D.C. It's your opportunity to meet with congressional leaders and federal agency influencers to let them know where cattlemen and women stand on critical issues that impact the cattle business and our way of life. Make plans to be in Washington, D.C. April 10th to the 12th for the 2018 NCBA Legislative Conference. Details at ncba.org.
What does it mean to be an American cattleman? It means you have what it takes where it counts, on the inside. At Ritchie, we understand that. It's what's on the inside that defines us. We share the same values: ingenuity, commitment, sense of pride. These are the values that built this country. They're the values that built this company. Ritchie, proud to be a partner to the American cattleman since 1921.
Welcome back to this special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattleman as we talk with beef cattle producers from Hawaii to learn about the unique challenges they face, as well as some of the concerns we all share in common. Let's turn to environmental issues for just a minute. I have to believe that's a big issue in Hawaii. Keoki, could you tell us some of the issues you face and what you're doing to address them?
Sure, Kevin. Hawaii, of course, has to follow the same environmental federal regulations as any other state, but what makes us unique, not only because we are an island state surrounded by the ocean, but in Hawaii, our ecosystems didn't evolve with grazers. So we have to pay really close attention to how our animals are impacting the native plants and the native animals that are there. So there's a lot of close partnerships with Nature Conservancy and our Department of Land and Natural Resources to make sure that we are managing our cattle and also managing those resources to improve and protect habitat.
And I've heard you use the term ecosystem services, and you're doing that obviously with cattle polo. Can you tell us what the term ecosystem services means and what you're doing to provide that for the state of Hawaii?
Well, basically, look, the cattle industry manages probably 60 or 70% of the land in the state of Hawaii. And so a lot of that land is public land that's rented. And so the give back for us to the state is to say, we'll manage the environmental issues for you, for the public. And those services revolve around endangered species, forest, watershed resources, hunting access, and those kinds of issues. And basically, it's our ability to do something that's managed for the whole. So it's not only for the public, it's for producing a food item, producing the ecosystem services that environmentalists want to see as far as maintaining species, taking care of invasives, and giving back some access issues for hunting and hiking and that type of thing.
Is there a lot of oversight that's done then to determine how you're doing in that area, or who manages that?
Basically, it's as an industry, we've come together and try to do some of these things. We realize that if we do not provide services to the general population, because everybody is not as concerned about food because we eat so well, right? And so we realize that we can give back by managing at no cost to the state of Hawaii and managing in a proper way.
I come from the Front Range of Colorado, and we're dealing with a lot of urban sprawl up and down that Front Range of Colorado. I can only imagine what it's like in a place like Maui.
Yeah, it's a very popular destination, both vacation-wise and for people wanting to relocate, primarily after they've made their money or fortune and want to retire. But as far as developing land into new housing projects, in Hawaii the regulation there is really tough, and you do not develop land just on the fact that you want to develop land. There's a whole lot of government regulation which curbs urban sprawl and growth. And a lot of the limiting factors that we have are the infrastructure of roads, water, and utilities. And, rightfully so, they keep the urban housing development suppressed so that it still is a nice place to live. And with the ranchers, what is appreciated is that we create open green space so that when you are there visiting, you don't just see houses and roofs. There are, large agricultural green space areas.
And that may be part of the answer to the next question, because I was just curious, how do you demonstrate to people who come to move to Hawaii the value of having cattle there? I mean, I would guess many people don't understand why you would even need cattle in Hawaii. What are you doing to get the public on your side?
I think one of the greatest things we have is we have a really unique story to tell. And we invite the public to come through basically an open gate policy to many of our ranches, where we invite the public to come and see what we're doing. and we have an opportunity to share with them the history and heritage of how the cattle industry started and how that really is important to the history and settlement of Hawaii.
It's fascinating. I remember being there myself and seeing some pictures of swimming cattle out to boats and so forth. And we want to talk a little bit more about how you market cattle these days when we come back. Don't go away. We'll have more insights from our panel of cattle producers from Hawaii, including the unique marketing challenges they face right after this. Stay with us.
Don't miss your chance to read the National Cattleman. It's the official publication of NCBA, and it's packed with timely news and information about the issues and events that affect your cattle business. Plus, the National Cattleman includes producer education, cattle market insights, and more. A subscription is free when you become a member of NCBA. Join now by calling 866-233-3872 or on the web at ncba.org.
Well, I think a rancher has to be a steward of the land. There's nobody else that can take care of the land better than a rancher. When we switched over to the Purina products, it was a step in the right direction.
The difference we see in the cattle is the consistency of their nutrition.
The cattle hold their condition a lot better throughout the whole year.
It does make a difference that we can see, day in and day out.
Welcome back. With beautiful beaches and landscapes and a tropical climate, you might think raising cattle in Hawaii would be a dream job, and you might be right. But like everywhere else, there are plenty of challenges too. Take, for instance, marketing your cattle. There's not a feeding industry on the islands and not much in the way of packing plants. So let's start there. Why don't you tell us just a little bit about traditionally, how have you marketed your calves?
Well, traditionally, our industry evolved with the ocean, and cattle were brought to Hawaii from northern Mexico and California in the 1780s, and they were done so. Cattle were basically had to be put in the ocean to get on a ship, and so the industry evolved with the vaquero tradition coming out to train the Hawaiian how to handle ride horses, work horses, take whatever they had in the environment, their rawhide, to make their equipment and to do the functions of what we call the cowboy functions.
And you call those paneolos, is that right?
They're called paneolos, which
Okay.
is the Hawaiianization of Espanol for Spanish.
Interesting.
So it evolved into the word paneolo. So today, all our stockmanship techniques and everything evolved all the way down from running feral cattle on the islands and going through a individual hides and tallow hunting industry, exporting byproducts, packing beef in a brine cured drum for ships called pipikaula, and evolved from there into a refrigerated business out of Oahu, and with grass finish, then to feed yards. And in the 90s, the feed yard industry no longer made any sense, as well as trying to compete in the packing industry with box product. Industry involved into an export calf industry. And that's where we sit today with a leaning back towards a grass-finished local product that is a small part of the market. It's a niche market. So that's where we've evolved historically. Lots of challenges going along the way. Obviously, a lot of different techniques were involved in Hawaii that eased the handling of animals. Lots of efficiency issues that I think were good, but the challenges of getting animals between islands was herd them down into the beach into a small stone pen and roping each one by the horns and dragging them in the water and tying their heads up on a longboat. Longshoremen rowing them out to a ship with a steam winch, one by one, into the ship and then down to the docks of Oahu.
Low stress cattle handling for sure. Well, but you still use ships to send cattle, is that right, Keoki? And I've heard of these cowtainers, is that what you call them?
That's right.
Tell us more.
The cowtainers, they're basically a modified shipping container, a 40-foot container. They call it a high cube container, so it has a little more height in it. They put a deck right through the middle of it, so that you have an upper and a lower deck. And then you cut some windows in it and put some feeders and waters in there, and you'll send a couple of stock tenders to take care of maybe 7 or so containers. And the ship, although the ship is a large container ship, they have to be really strategic about where they put those containers on the ship, because the stock tenders have to have access to them. So they don't necessarily put them in the front or right in the back, but they put them behind the house so that the smell doesn't bother them. And the crew gets along a lot better when they're in the back of the house instead of in front of it. And so they'll tend to those cattle, make sure they have feed and water. It'll take about 7 to 10 days, depending on where you're going. We usually go to either to Oakland or Seattle, and the shrink varies quite a bit depending on the cattle themselves, anywhere from 4 to 10%. The death loss is actually very minimal. It's less than 1%. We've been shipping cattle through our co-op for over 25 years, and those records, the data goes back that far. So it's always challenging, and shipping, is always a stressful time for everybody. The guys loading them and the cattle. So we spend a lot of time sorting our cattle ahead of time and making sure that we get the best cattle we can. And they have to be the right size to fit in the container, and they have to be strong enough to go. And then really getting your load density down so they have enough room, because they got to be able to lay down, stand up, walk to the feed trough. And so you got to monitor that pretty closely.
And I was going to ask you, what size? So are we talking 5-weight kind of wean calves?
Yeah,
or?
so the 4 to 5 weight is the typical,
right.
Yeah.
But you go ahead.
One thing a lot of people ask is, where does this take place?
Right.
But the way the containers are set up, they're they come right up to the ranch, so we load them right off of the ranch. We don't haul the cattle down to the pier to load for that. So
it's amazing. And Ken?
Creates a marketing, I wouldn't say challenge, but your target, I guess, as Keoki was saying, and you're just saying at 500 pounds, because these containers, the high cube containers are 9 feet high, and you're probably going to use 8 to 10 inches in the middle of that for floor. So that leaves you about a 4.5 foot height on each deck. So you can't, we have the capability of getting cattle to an 800 pound weight in Hawaii, but they're too big to fit. So the 500, maybe a little over, those cattle can still fit in those double deck containers comfortably.
And how does that compare and contrast, cost-wise or otherwise, with flying cattle in planes?
We fly them as well too, and that works well for the larger cattle. But we've also gone a couple years of just shipping all our calves via the plane, and the cost, there's really not that big a difference. The challenge with the plane is that it's limited to 100,000 pounds a load, and it's one load per week. So basically, if you got 4,000 head, you're shipping 40 weeks out of the year, and that's all you get done. And then you're missing the growing seasons over here. So logistically, the containers are a lot better to move your cattle in a timely fashion.
So can I ask what it means to returns? I mean, I think of trucking costs, but I have no idea what it costs to put cattle. What does it do to your returns to have to ship those feeder cattle that far away?
Our returns as an industry have been very beneficial for us to go through this process. And let me just backtrack a tiny bit. Economies of scale, as Keoki mentioned before, we're an 80,000 head cow business. And so our economies of scale, when we get to marketing, are really not competitive at all. We can't compete with the packing plants, the feed yards, and the processing and all that. So those costs got really high for us, to where we were discounting our calves so much that we discounted them more than what it cost to ship them. So the cost of shipping is high. It's running probably somewhere around $200 for a 400 pound animal. But it's to our advantage to spend $200 and get back $1,400 or $1,500 on the mainland, right? So there's a margin there. And we look at our ability to produce grass year-round. It's not good grass year-round, but we can manage the herd so that they're running the ideal times. But the economics of it work really well for us to export our calves to the feed, take advantage of the efficient packing and processing, and bring the beef back. Now, in the last 10 years, with branded programs and product programs and niche marketing that the industry has started in, the late 90s, early 2000s, we've developed local markets now that are paying premiums for grass-finished cattle. So if we can get a premium, then it behooves us to go through the high cost of processing to keep them there. But that's a niche market.
I want to spend a little more time talking about that, but before we go there, Jason, tell us a little bit about some of the production technologies you've implemented to try to become more competitive and remain competitive to folks who are here on the mainland.
You know, we being an island state, we are surrounded by our closest neighbors 2,500 miles away. But we've had great people in our industry for years, and Pono's been a great example, Keoki, and several that have gone before, who really saw the value of having that close interaction. And so the technology that we get to experience in Hawaii is very similar to anything. We went to a demonstration this morning and they were using RFID tags. That's been a part of our operation. It came in really handy when we were shipping cattle to Canada early on. And so, we try to stay close to the technology and try to be cutting edge. And at the same time, hang on to those old traditions, just like all the ranches in the country.
Absolutely fascinating. Still ahead, we'll take a look at the growing local beef movement in Hawaii and how producers are taking advantage of the opportunity to finish their cattle on grass. We'll have more on Hawaii's beef cattle business right after this.
Say goodbye to your toughest pasture and rangeland weeds for good. Because one product offers season-long control, handles the widest spectrum of broadleaf weeds, and clears the way for increased forage with greater grazing flexibility. So you get more beef per acre at a cost that can't be beat. It's Graze On Next HL herbicide, and if it's in your pastures, plain and simple, weeds won't be.
No matter what job I've got to do, my John Deere 5E tractor can do it all. Whether I'm cutting, moving feed, or building a fence. Using my 5E means my work gets done faster at a price I can afford, and that works for me.
You're watching NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen, your source for cattle industry information and education on RFD TV.
Welcome back. On those cold winter days in the mountains or on the plains, I bet some of us have probably wished we could be raising cattle in Hawaii, and that's just what our guests do. But as we've learned, there are plenty of challenges they face too. So now, let's turn our attention to beef consumers in Hawaii and how that's impacting your business. Guys, you started talking, Pono, about local beef and the trend towards local beef and your ability to raise grass year-round. Talk to us about how that market is growing, or if it's growing in Hawaii.
It's a market that is growing. It's a niche market, and it has to pay a premium to it, so we don't know how big it will get, but it offers us the opportunity to promote beef on the local market, and we have the ability to produce grass year-round, so we can get this product in consistently. So the consistency is a really important part of it, and I think what you see in the market is they want product every week of the year. So between 4 or 5 different ranchers, different ecosystems, and the fact that we have grass year-round, we can consistently put animals into the market every week of the year. And so that works, and we get paid a premium for it. We deal with some of the big chain stores like Safeway, Whole Foods, and those folks that have a niche market ability to attract the right customers.
Tell us a little bit, I bet our viewers are curious about the kind of grass that you grow in Hawaii, and give us an insight of the various kinds of grass and how that might compare to places like Utah or Iowa or anywhere else here.
You know, the grass types, we've got probably two predominant grasses. One that grows in our higher, wetter elevations called kikuyu, and then we have guinea grass that grows along the coastal areas, lower elevation. We see what protein levels from 9 to 12% on some of those forages. High moisture, you know, makes it tough if you're trying to put gains on cattle at times, but there's plenty of it. So £1.5 pounds, 2 pounds a day is really that's probably exceptional type of country. And you know, the diversification in forages is definitely a benefit. So we do have clovers out on the range, and some other native plants that really help boost the protein level. We're doing some other studies or trials, I guess, on some feed to help add value to that grass and put these gains on these cattle.
And I was going to ask, obviously, in order to have a local beef business, you got to have local processing. So tell us about the local processing infrastructure that you have in Hawaii. Jason, do you have?
Yeah. So while processing is small and it's varied, each island has its own processing facility or two, and but our total numbers is probably local animals is probably around 10,000 head a year. And so while we've got 80,000 head of animals on the island, processing can be a challenge.
A little bit of a bottleneck.
Is it? Yeah.
Expanding that. And one of the things that we've seen is the market used to be predominantly a cow market. And over the last 10 years, we've seen that kind of flip-flop, about 75% cows, 25% market animals. And today we're probably just opposite of that. So it makes it a challenge when we're trying to move our cull animals, these cattle, and hoping that one doesn't cannibalize the other in the market.
Right. So Keoki, how do you balance the market demand and what is the right balance in terms of ideally how many cattle you'd like to process right there in Hawaii and how many cattle you'd like to send to the mainland for feeder cattle?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, we're certainly ramping up our numbers. Well, we have been ramping them up until we kind of hit a ceiling in terms of processing. So our local marketing, we felt there was an opportunity to continue to grow that. We can't do that with the existing facilities we have now. But, you know, if 1/3 of our calf crop stays here and 2/3, which is kind of what we're doing now, goes to the mainland and marketed over there, the key is to have access to competitive markets. And no matter where you go, that's what we need. And so if we can get as efficient as we can in transporting them there, then that gives us an advantage over there. And if we can get more efficient for processing, we have lots of demand for our product. We have lots of support. The consumers want to see more local product. So we want to grow that side of it as well. And then we have a little better balance. We're not dependent on shipping all our calves off, because once you start doing that, then you increase your cow herd, and then you become more vulnerable when a drought comes because you're running a maximum cow herd. So we've kind of tried to moderate that number a little bit so we have enough room to finish these cattle as well. And I think that gives us a better management tool for our grasses instead of going all one or the other. You know, we have no sale yards, so we can't destock and we can't restock very easily. So it's a bit of a challenge, and finding that number that, you know, lets you take advantage of the extra forage and yet is manageable when you don't have the forage.
Not put you at risk. Now, Ken, you were mentioning that there may be some more opportunity for more grass given the fact that a sugar plantation is going out of business. Is that right?
Yeah, you know, sugar was the #1 agricultural industry in Hawaii for a number of years, and I believe Oahu might have been the first place it went out. It eventually faded out on the Big Island. Hawaii and Maui was the last stronghold of sugar, but it also, due to a lot cheaper labor in foreign countries came to an end. But a lot of the land on the Big Island has been converted from sugar into grazing, and that's in the process with quite a bit of that land on Maui repurposed, still in agriculture, but now into grazing. And with that industry on Maui, the land was 36,000 acres of irrigated. So there's an opportunity to be able to take the drought out of the equation, because they still have the water, and grass doesn't take as much as sugar. Sugar is a water-thirsty crop. But in that, they are looking to convert to you got to retrain the consumer somewhat to go from primarily liking the grain-fed to the taste for the grass fat that all of us are looking to boost, because it means we can produce the finished product right there in
locally.
Hawaii.
Yeah. Interesting opportunities ahead, it sounds like. And we'll have more insights from our panel of Hawaii cattle producers, including their thoughts on why it's important to join together in their state cattlemen's organization. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Do you know all you need to about working cattle? Did you know there are proven methods that can reduce stress for the animals, for you and your crew? Now there's an easy way for you to learn from the experts who can help sharpen your stockmanship and stewardship skills. In interactive sessions, you'll learn better ways to work cattle more efficiently, skills that can help put more money in your pocket. Find out more and locate an upcoming event near you at the website stockmanshipandstewardship.org.
There is a new world out there, revealing itself in unpredictable ways. A world that demands more from the land and those who grow, farm, and build on it. This new world calls for the ingenuity to get more out of it, while preserving as much as we can. After all, to stay ahead of tomorrow, we need to be equipped for it today.
Welcome back to NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen as we continue our exclusive look at Hawaii's beef cattle industry and get some firsthand thoughts from our four guests who live and work every day to grow their cattle ranches in Hawaii. Guys, I want to talk just a little bit about what you've been doing and some really neat things, Keoki, in terms of trying to communicate your message to consumers in Hawaii. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, we've, like Jason mentioned earlier, we've always had an open gate policy with the ranch, and we have a lot of visitors come in, and we also encourage our employees to go out to their schools and talk to their kids about what they do, and so we're pretty active in the schools and in the community. But one of the things we've done just recently, we finished a series of videos and with the support of the Department of Agriculture. So if you go on our website, you can click on that deal and it'll show you the history of ranching in Hawaii. It'll talk about our animal health and well-being processes, as well as our marketing challenges, and we also talk about the future of the industry as well too. So it's kind of a neat opportunity, and all you got to do is go on the Hawaii Cattlemen's website and it'll take you right to it.
Or we could go to Hawaii and see it for ourselves.
You could come. Yes, you could come. You're always welcome.
That would be a good option as well. We talked about environment just a little earlier, and Ken, I want to follow up on one of the comments you made during break, is the role the cattle industry plays in managing invasive species of weeds. And I can only imagine in that kind of environment that once you get something started with all that moisture and heat, it could probably take over a ranch, right? Tell us more about that.
Absolutely. And the amount of invasive species in Hawaii is a little bit overwhelming, because just about anything will grow there. And people bring in ornamentals and they get away. We talked earlier about cattle being Pono talked about cattle being a gift to the king, and that being the start of the cattle industry. Well, There was also on Maui, Molokai, and Lanai, gift to the king of axis deer, and they have become a huge problem. There's no predators in Hawaii. We don't have coyotes, wolves, mountain lions, bobcats. So about the only thing that will keep them harvested is hunters or some animal control. But plant populations of invasive species, through proper grazing management, you can keep a lot of these invasives at bay and keep your grass and forage strong. But some tree species, they get pretty costly.
I bet.
In keeping those invasive black wattle, Christmasberry, guava, different types of tree species from overtaking your range.
The ranch. That's amazing. So one other thing, Jason, I want to talk about is beef quality assurance. Obviously, we spent a lot of time on this show talking about BQA. Has that taken hold in Hawaii?
You know, it really has, and I think where beef quality assurance has been a real help is when our cowboys and cattlemen and cattlewomen in Hawaii have an opportunity to see the full length of the production system. And one thing that we try to take a few of our employees at Parker Ranch out to see the feeding industry, the packing industry, and where these cattle are grazing, and expose them to each phase so that they can see that the value that they add to that animal as a calf and as a stalker and as a feeder is expressed all the way through the chain. And beef quality assurance has done that. We also follow the GAP. Pono mentioned Whole Foods is one of our customers, Country Natural Beef, and we follow the GAP certification standards. Being able to handle these cattle in a humane way, low stress, all of that has been really helpful to our industry.
And I got to ask you about the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council. 80,000 cattle strong in Hawaii, but you have a really strong state association. Tell us a little bit about the value of that, Pono.
Well, we back probably 20 or 30 years ago, as the sugar industry, which was dominant in Hawaii, also dominated the political arena. And we could see the writing on the wall as they were slowly going out of business, that agriculture was losing a voice. We had strong county associations at that point, and we got together and decided, hey, we got to come together as a state now and project ourselves at the state legislature level for political reasons, as well as get education among all our producers. And tied with that was the ability, the next phase of our business plan was we were going to export calves. What do? We get to the mainland. We need contacts. We got together with NCBA. We got unified with NCBA. And just so the combination of building a strong organization statewide that was unified nationally gave us the ability to go to Washington, work on transportation issues, animal rights issues, those kinds of things. We can now be a presence at the state legislature and monitor what's going on as far as either challenges or opportunities that come forward in the political arena. So it's been very important for us to get together and then educate ourselves, not only how we produce and how we need change, but what's the opportunities.
Absolutely. It's very, very impressive. Now don't go away. We'll be back with our good friend Baxter Black right after this.
If you're connected with the beef cattle business, then you should like the NCBA page on Facebook. The NCBA Facebook page shares photos, news, and valuable information about the beef cattle industry. You can also follow the NCBA Twitter feed at Beef USA. So stay in touch with NCBA on Facebook and Twitter.
Did you know that Prefert makes over 1,000 different farm, ranch, and rodeo items? And now, thanks to Prefert Direct, it's easier than ever before to get access to every item Prefert makes delivered direct to your local dealer. For more information about Prefert Direct, visit us at prefert.com. Prefert, America's #1 name in farm, ranch, and rodeo.
When a new calf hits the ground, his clock starts ticking. A belly full of colostrum gives him his best odds, but if he doesn't get any, his time starts running out. That's when you grab a bag of Oxford Ag Colostrum in their patented feeding system. Fill them with warm water, shake it to mix, feed it with a tube or nipple, and you are done. No bucket, no bottle, no mess, and right on time. Get yours at oxfordag.com. Costs less than a dead calf.
Somebody asked me what people have had the greatest influence on my life. Well, one of them has to be Rupert Mansell. Mr. Mansell was my VOAG teacher, here by the owl. The owl is a symbol of wisdom. Well, it's hard for a 16-year-old kid to evaluate wisdom. Most of our projects included 4 or 5 scraggly sheep or a couple steers. Sure, there was a few kids whose folks were good farmers and had impressive projects. But Rupert, as we called him, treated us all the same. What we all had was a love of agriculture and the optimism of youth. He taught us that dirt was under your fingernails and soil was what you tilled. He tried to teach us how to weld and work on machinery, block sheep, fit a steer, castrate a hog, and how to tell a rib steak from a chuck. It was not until much later that I came to realize how much a VOAG teacher has to know. I said Rupert treated everybody the same. That's not quite true, since he made me feel like I was special. But if the truth were known, he probably made us all feel that way. When we decided to invite the governor to be the speaker at our local FFA banquet, he said to go ahead, but don't advertise it in case the gov didn't show. We sent out invitations to all the school board, principal, and other dignitaries, but most declined. They had other things to do. The day before the banquet, the governor confirmed. It came out in the paper. Suddenly, the local dignitaries were calling, trying to get tickets. Overnight, they had developed a sincere interest in the FFA. I like to think it was one of Rupert's finest hours. For all you dedicated VOAG teachers, I salute you. But I remind you that you're in a position to shape young people's lives, like mine. It's no small responsibility. And to Mr. Mansell, from all us ex-reporters, green hands, state farmers, soil judges, girls and boys, if we ever amount to anything, you had a hand in it. Yep, you, there by the owl. This is Baxter Black from out there. Thanks.
Thanks, Baxter. We sure appreciate your weekly contribution to our show. Want to rewatch an episode of Cattlemen to Cattleman or catch up on anything you've missed? Then visit our YouTube page. You'll find replays of all our shows filled with educational segments and producer profiles from around the country. It's also another chance to see Baxter Black. So check us out on youtube.com/Cattlemen to Cattleman. We're back with some final thoughts from our panel of Hawaii cattlemen. Stay with us.
Are you concerned about the impact government policies could have on your cattle business? One way to make your voice heard in Washington is by joining NCBA. When you join, you'll have access to key policy updates and insights from Beltway Beef. It's the best way to hear directly from NCBA's DC team. Beltway Beef provides valuable policy information, and it's free for NCBA members. Stay in touch with Beltway Beef. Join now at ncba.org.
Welcome back. We've had some great insights about cattle production in Hawaii today, and as we wrap up our program, I'd like to ask each of our panelists to share some final thoughts. Gentlemen, what are some of your hopes and dreams for the Hawaiian cattle business in the future? Keoki?
Well, you know, we want it to be a sustainable business, and one of the most important components is to be able to attract the youth back into our businesses. I mean, I think the success of the cattle industry is largely based on the family business. And so we got to be able to find ways to bring our youth back into it, and so that not only do they appreciate the values that we have, but they also bring the technology and the ideas that they have and keep the industry young and vibrant.
That's fantastic. Ken?
You know, keeping more of our cattle in Hawaii to be marketed in Hawaii I think is a big challenge and a big opportunity for production going forward, looking at the changes that have come about in the recent past here in Hawaii with the cattle industry taking over lands that were being used by sugar and so on. But being able to market more of our cattle locally is a big plus for the cattle industry.
Fantastic. Pono, what would you add?
Well, my big thing would be to remain profitable so that we can sustain our families and the people that we work with. Probably one of the biggest enjoyments of my life have been working with the different families on the ranch over generations, and with folks like this and folks like you. So that's all good for us and sustain the environment that we're in that produces some of the best grass in the world.
That's fantastic. Jason?
Well, what's left? I mean, we've talked about sustainability, but I do think I'm an advocate for change, and as I look at Hawaii and I've seen all of the transformation that Hawaii has dealt with, and you know, I really look forward to seeing Hawaii being able to adapt with all of the changes that continue to take place in our industry and in the world.
That's fantastic. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming to our show and sharing with us your insights. It's been absolutely fascinating, and I hope to visit some of your ranches someday. And don't forget, every day the NCBA staff in Washington, D.C. and in Denver is working to protect the interest of cattle producers in Hawaii and all across the country. Join in the fight to protect our way of life by becoming an NCBA member. Just call 1-866-233-3872, or you can visit the website ncba.org. Well, that wraps up this edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. Thanks again to our panel and to you for watching. We'll see you next week right here on RFD TV.